Captain Day One stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the planet below. It looked peaceful, covered in blue oceans and green forests. His crew had been exploring this sector for 3 months, and this was the first world they found with intelligent life. "Captain, I'm picking up signals from the surface," said the communications officer. "They're trying to talk to us." Day One nodded. "Dr. Hana, you're up. Let's make first contact." Dr. Hana Park moved to her station, her fingers dancing across the controls. She was the best at talking to new species. After 20 minutes of work, she smiled. "I've got it, Captain. Opening a channel now." The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Its eyes were large and kind, and it smiled at them. "Greetings, travelers. I am Lyran. Welcome to Valen Prime." Over the next week, Day One and his team learned everything they could about the Vellani. They were peaceful people who loved art and music. Their cities were beautiful, full of gardens and sculptures, but Hana noticed something strange. The Vellani had no weapons, no armies, and no defenses. "Lyran," Hana asked during one meeting, "how do you protect yourselves?" The old Vellani looked sad. "We cannot. We have never been good at violence. Our bodies are weak, and fighting hurts our minds. We simply hope that others will leave us in peace." Day One felt a chill run down his spine. "Has anyone else found you before us?" Lyran's glow dimmed. "Yes. 3 other species came. The first took our minerals and left. The second studied us, like animals, in a zoo. The third tried to teach us to fight, but when we could not learn, they grew frustrated and abandoned us." Hana pulled up her computer and started searching through galactic records. What she found made her angry. The Vellani were listed in the database, marked as non-viable for protection. The Galactic Council had decided they were not worth defending. "Why?" Day One demanded, reading over her shoulder. "Resources," Hana said bitterly. "The Council says they can't waste ships and soldiers on every weak species. They only protect those who can help defend themselves." Before Day One could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. "Captain, we have incoming ships," the tactical officer shouted. "Unknown configuration. Heavily armed." The screen showed 5 large warships entering the system. They were dark and angular, covered in weapons. Day One had seen ships like these before in reports. The Crawl. They were raiders who attacked weak colonies and took what they wanted. "Open a channel to the Vellani," Day One ordered. "Lyran, you need to evacuate your cities. Hostile ships are approaching." On the surface, panic spread through the Vellani population. They simply stood in their gardens and waited, their bodies glowing with fear. Day One made a decision that would change everything. "Helm, position us between those ships and the planet. Weapons, charge all systems." His first officer grabbed his arm. "Captain, we're an exploration vessel. We have orders to move on if we encounter danger. We're not supposed to engage in combat." "I know what our orders say," Day One replied. "But I'm not leaving these people to die." He opened a channel to Earth Command, knowing the message would take hours to reach them. "This is Captain Day One of the Horizon's Promise. I am reporting first contact with a species called the Vellani. They are peaceful, defenseless, and under imminent attack. I am engaging hostile forces to protect them. We'll send updates as situation develops." The Crawl ships moved closer. Day One's ship was small compared to them, but he had surprise on his side. "Fire," he ordered. Missiles streaked through space, hitting the lead Crawl ship. It staggered but kept coming. The other ships returned fire, and Day One's vessel shook under the impact. "Shields at 60%, someone called out. "Keep firing. Target their engines." The battle lasted 30 minutes. Day One's crew fought with everything they had, and somehow, they damaged 2 of the Crawl ships, enough to make them retreat. The other 3 pulled back, regrouping at the edge of the system. They'll be back, the tactical officer said. And they'll bring more ships. Daewon looked at the planet below, where millions of Villani watched the sky. Then he looked at his crew. They were scared, but determined. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we need help. Tell them we're not abandoning these people. Hana approached him quietly. The Council will call us fools. Every other species looked at the Villani and decided they weren't worth the cost. Then every other species was wrong, Daewon said firmly. We're humans. We don't leave people behind just because saving them is hard. Below, on Velen Prime, Lyran stood with his people, watching the small human ship hanging in their sky like a shield. Tears streamed down his face, glowing like small stars in the darkness. The Villani had been abandoned by everyone. Everyone, except humanity. 3 weeks had passed since the first battle. Earth Command had debated for days about what to do. Some politicians wanted to pull the ships back, saying humanity couldn't afford to fight someone else's war. But then videos of the Villani reached Earth. People saw their glowing faces, their beautiful cities, their children playing in gardens. Public opinion shifted fast. Within a week, Earth sent reinforcements. Commander Jiwoo Lee arrived with 3 warships and 2,000 Marines. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for winning impossible battles. When she stepped onto Velen Prime, Lyran greeted her with a traditional Villani bow. "Thank you for coming," Lyran said softly. "We know this is not your fight." Jiwoo looked at the Villani elder, then at the city around them. Everything was open and exposed. No walls, no bunkers, no defensive positions. "It is now," she said. "Show me everything. I need to understand your world, if I'm going to defend it." She brought pilot Taeyang Choi with her, a young man who flew fighters like he was born in the cockpit. He was cocky and loud, but everyone agreed he was the best pilot in the fleet. "This is going to be rough," Taeyang said, looking at the sky. "No planetary shields, no orbital cannons, nothing. We're starting from zero." Jiwoo spent the next 2 weeks planning. She set up orbital defense platforms and positioned her ships around the planet. Marines trained Villani volunteers in basic evacuation procedures. Though it was clear the Villani would never be soldiers. Their bodies couldn't handle the stress, and violence made them physically ill. One young Villani named Nira watched the humans work tirelessly. She was curious and brave, often following the Marines around and asking questions. One day, she approached Taeyang as he checked his fighter. "Why do you help us?" she asked. "The others said we were too weak to save." Taeyang stopped working and looked at her. "Because that's what humans do. We see someone in trouble, we help. It's that simple." "But you might die," Nira said, her glow dimming with worry. "Maybe." Taeyang shrugged. "But if we ran away every time things got dangerous, we wouldn't be human. We'd be cowards." The crawl returned on a Tuesday morning. This time, they brought 20 ships. War Chief Karok led the fleet personally, determined to crush the humans who had embarrassed him. "All ships, battle stations," Jiwoo ordered. "This is it. Hold the line." The space battle was brutal. Crawl ships hammered the orbital platforms with heavy weapons. Human vessels darted between them, firing missiles and lasers. Taeyang led a squadron of 12 fighters against impossible odds. 3 enemy ships breaking through, someone shouted. "They're heading for the surface." "I've got them," Taeyang said, pushing his fighter to maximum speed. He chased the Kral ships through the atmosphere, dodging their counterfire. 2 of his wingmen were hit and went down. He gritted his teeth and kept going. On the ground, Jiwoo watched the battle through her command center. She noticed something strange. Every time a Kral ship changed tactics, one of the Villani nearby would tense up a second before it happened. "Nira," Jiwoo said, "can you feel what the Kral are feeling?" The young Villani nodded. "Their emotions are loud, angry, aggressive. I can sense when they're about to attack." Jiwoo's mind raced. This could change everything. Can you tell me what they're going to do before they do it? I think so, Nira said nervously. Then do it. Tell me everything you feel. For the next 3 hours, Nira stood beside Jiwoo, calling out the emotional shifts she sensed from the crawl ships. Jiwoo used this information to position her forces perfectly. When the crawl tried to flank, human ships were already waiting. When they tried to retreat, missiles cut off their escape. In space, Taeyang finally caught up to the 3 crawl ships heading for the surface. He was out of missiles and low on fuel. Sorry about this, he muttered, and rammed his fighter into the engine of the nearest ship. He ejected at the last second, his pod tumbling toward the planet. The explosion triggered a chain reaction. The damaged crawl ship crashed into another, and both spiraled into the third. All 3 went down in flames, far from any Villani cities. Taeyang's pod is descending over Sector 7. A voice crackled over the radio. He's alive. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it ended, the crawl had lost 12 ships. The humans had lost 1 warship and 7 fighters. It was a costly victory, but it was a victory. Jiwoo walked through the Marine barracks that night, looking at the wounded. 43 soldiers had died. Twice that many were injured. She felt the weight of every loss. Lyran found her there, sitting alone. I am sorry, he said quietly. These humans died because of us. No, Jiwoo said firmly. They died protecting something worth protecting. That's not the same thing, is it not? Lyran's glow flickered. We are weak. Perhaps the council was right. Perhaps we are not worth this cost. Jiwoo stood up and faced him. Every species in this galaxy looked at you and saw weakness. But you know what I see? I see people who turned their whole planet into a work of art. I see a species that chose beauty over weapons. That takes a different kind of strength. Lyran was quiet for a long moment. My people are beginning to wonder if we should change. If we should become more like you. Don't, Jiwoo said. The galaxy has enough warriors. It needs dreamers too. That's why we're here. To protect the dreamers. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. Other species watched with curiosity and disbelief. The humans were actually doing it. They were defending the Villani. Taking casualties. Spending resources. Most species thought it was madness. But a few younger races watched and wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was another way to survive in the universe besides the ruthless calculus of power. 6 months had changed everything. Human bases now dotted Villan Prime's surface, but they didn't look like military installations. The Villani had decorated them with gardens and murals. Human children played with Villani younglings in the parks. It was the strangest military occupation anyone had ever seen. Dr. Minji Quan had arrived 2 months ago to study what was happening. She was a psychologist, and what she observed fascinated her. Humans and Villani were bonding in ways nobody expected. It's remarkable, she told Day One during one of her reports. The Villani can sense human emotions, which helps our soldiers process trauma from combat. Meanwhile, human determination and courage is inspiring the Villani to face their fears. They're helping each other heal. Ensign Hyun Baek was one of the clearest examples. He was a young officer, barely 22, who had lost 3 friends in the first big battle. He had nightmares every night until he met Tael, a Villani artist who worked near the human barracks. Tael noticed Hyun's pain and approached him one day. Your light is flickering, Tael said gently. That's how the Villani described emotional distress. I keep seeing their faces, Hyun admitted. The friends I lost. I can't stop thinking about it. May I? Tael asked, extending a glowing hand. When Hyun nodded, Tael placed his palm on Hyun's shoulder. A warm sensation spread through Hyun's body. It didn't erase the pain, but it made it bearable. More than that, he could feel Tael's compassion, his genuine care. How do you do that? Hyun asked, amazed. We feel what others feel, Tael explained. Your pain becomes my pain. But sharing it makes it lighter for both of us. Over the weeks, they spent more time together. Tael showed Hyun his artwork, paintings that seemed to glow with inner light. Hyun taught Tael about Earth, about mountains and oceans and cities. They became close friends, and then something more. Is this allowed? Tael asked one evening. A human and a Vellani, caring for each other this way? Hyun smiled. I don't know. But I don't care either. You make me want to be better. Stronger. That's all that matters. Minji documented their relationship along with dozens of others. Humans and Vellani were forming bonds that went beyond simple friendship. They were becoming something new together. But the peace didn't last. The Galactic Council sent observers, ships from various species who wanted to see this strange situation for themselves. Most were skeptical. A few were intrigued. Among them was Ambassador Vrax, the same reptilian who had written the report declaring the Vellani non-viable. He walked through the human bases with cold eyes, taking notes. Impressive, he admitted to Day One. But ultimately, unsustainable. The crawl will return with overwhelming force. When they do, this experiment will end. Then we'll stop them again, Day One said. Will you? Vrax challenged. How many human lives is this worth? 1,000? 10,000? Eventually, your people will question the cost. Day One stepped closer. You don't understand humans at all. We don't decide someone's worth by how useful they are. We help because it's right. Vrax hissed in what might have been laughter. Such noble words. We shall see if they survive contact with reality. He was right about one thing. The Crawl were coming back. Intelligence reports showed War Chief Karak gathering ships from allied clans. He had been humiliated twice. And now, it was personal. Admiral Sora Nam arrived from Earth with 10 warships, twice as many support vessels, and 5,000 additional troops. She was a legendary commander. Gray-haired and sharp-minded. Show me the situation, she demanded as soon as she landed. Jiwoo walked her through the defenses. They had improved significantly. Orbital platforms were stronger, fighters were more numerous, and the integration with Vellani empaths was giving them an edge in predicting enemy movements. But Sora looked worried. It's good work. But the Crawl are bringing 60 ships this time. Maybe more. The Vellani Elder Council gathered to discuss the crisis. Lyran stood before his people, his glow steady despite his fear. The humans have given so much for us, he said. Many have died. More will die. Some of our people are asking if we should fight alongside them. The council erupted in debate. Fighting went against everything the Vellani were. Their bodies couldn't handle combat. Violence made them sick. But the thought of watching humans die while they did nothing was becoming unbearable. A young Vellani named Soren stood up. I volunteer. Teach me to fight. I may not be strong, but I can stand beside them. As will I, said another voice. Then another. Within an hour, 200 Vellani had volunteered. Jiwoo met with them that evening. Looking at their glowing, delicate forms, she felt her heart break. You don't have to do this. We're here to protect you, not the other way around. You misunderstand, Lyran said quietly. For 6 months, we have watched you sacrifice everything for us. If we do nothing, we are not peaceful. We are simply cowards hiding behind your courage. We must try. They couldn't fight on the front lines. Their bodies weren't built for it. But they could coordinate communications, help evacuate civilians, and use their empathic abilities to support human troops. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sora stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the stars. They're coming soon, she said to Day One, who stood beside her. Maybe within the week, we'll be ready, Day One replied. Will we? Sora turned to face him. Day One, you started something here. Something important. But I need you to understand what's at stake. If we lose this battle, the Vellani will be wiped out, and humanity's reputation in the galaxy will be destroyed. And if we win? Day One asked. Sora smiled slightly. If we win, we change the rules. We prove that strength isn't just about weapons and power. We prove that compassion can be strategic. The Crawl fleet appeared 3 days later. 62 ships, bristling with weapons. War Chief Carrack sent a message to the humans. You have fought well, for animals. But this ends now. Withdraw, or be destroyed with the glowing insects you protect. Admiral Sora responded personally. This is Admiral Sora Nam of the Earth Defense Fleet. We will not withdraw. If you want this world, you'll have to go through every last one of us. The Crawl fleet moved into attack formation. Human crews rushed to battle stations. On the surface, Vellani volunteers took their positions, glowing with fear but standing firm. The greatest battle for Velen Prime was about to begin. The Crawl fleet came like a storm of metal and fire. Their ships filled the sky, blotting out the stars. War Chief Carrack wasn't playing games anymore. He wanted total victory, and he wanted humanity to watch the Vellani die. All ships, engage, Admiral Sora ordered. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the tension beneath it. The space battle began with a fury that shook the orbital platforms. Human warships fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered, 3-1. Missiles filled the void between ships. Lasers cut through the darkness. Explosions bloomed like terrible flowers. They're breaking through the orbital line. The tactical officer shouted. 15 ships heading for the surface. Ground forces, prepare for landing. General Inwu Song commanded. He was a veteran of Earth's last war. A solid man, with gray streaks in his hair and scars on his hands. He stood in the command center on Velen Prime, watching the enemy ships descend. The Crawl didn't aim for the human bases. They went straight for Vellani cities. They wanted to break humanity's spirit by destroying what they were protecting. The first drop pods hit in the garden district of the capital city. Crawl warriors poured out. Towering creatures with 4 arms and armored hides. They carried heavy weapons and moved with brutal efficiency. Inwu's Marines met them in the streets. The fighting was savage and close. Buildings that had stood for centuries became battlegrounds. Vellani civilians fled in terror, their glowing bodies like lanterns in the smoke and darkness. Pull back to defensive line 3, Inwu ordered. We can't save the whole city, but we can protect the evacuation routes. In the command center, Nira and 20 other Vellani empaths sat in a circle, their minds linked. They were feeling the emotions of every Crawl warrior in the city, sensing their intentions, predicting their movements. They're flanking through the eastern gardens. Nira gasped, her body shaking from the psychic strain. Redirect 3rd Battalion, Inwu commanded immediately. His troops arrived just in time to stop the flanking force. The Vellani empaths were saving human lives with every prediction, but the cost was terrible. Nira could feel the rage and bloodlust of the Crawl warriors. It was like drowning in fire. Other empaths were collapsing from the strain, their bodies glowing erratically. Above the planet, the space battle raged on. Sora's flagship took hit after hit, shields failing, hull breaching in 3 sections. She refused to retreat. Ram that ship, she ordered, pointing at a Crawl carrier. Take it with us if we have to. Admiral, no. Her first officer protested. Do it. The flagship surged forward, engines screaming. It crashed into the Crawl carrier at full speed. Both ships exploded in a blast that lit up the planet below. Sora evacuated to a smaller vessel moments before impact. But 200 crew members didn't make it out. On the surface, Hyun fought beside his Marines in the Western District. Tyle was supposed to be in the evacuation shelters, but the young Vellani had refused to leave. He stayed at the field hospital, helping wounded humans despite his body shaking with fear. You shouldn't be here. Hyun told him during a brief lull in the fighting. Neither should you, Tael replied, gently placing his hands on a wounded Marine's chest. Sensing where the pain was worst, an explosion rocked the hospital. Crawl warriors had broken through the line. They burst into the building, weapons raised. Hyun stood between them and the wounded, his rifle up. You want them? You go through me first. The Crawl warriors laughed and advanced. Hyun opened fire, dropping one, then another. But there were too many. A plasma bolt caught him in the side, and he went down. Tael didn't think. He just moved. The small Villani threw himself over Hyun's body, shielding him. Please, he begged the Crawl. Please don't. The lead Crawl warrior raised his weapon. Then, a different Villani appeared. It was Soren, carrying a human rifle that looked too big for his delicate frame. His aim was terrible, but he fired anyway, bullets going everywhere. It was enough to make the Crawl turn. Other Villani volunteers appeared. A dozen of them, armed with whatever they could carry. They couldn't fight well. Most of them were shaking so badly they could barely stand. But they stood anyway. The Crawl hesitated. They had expected an easy target. Helpless victims. Instead, they found something they didn't understand. Prey. That fought back. That moment of hesitation cost them. Marine reinforcements arrived, and the Crawl were driven back. The battle for Velen Prime lasted 3 days. It was the longest 3 days anyone could remember. The streets ran with blood, both red and the silvery fluid that flowed in Villani veins. Buildings burned. Gardens that had taken centuries to grow were destroyed in minutes. But humanity didn't break, and neither did the Villani. On the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. A message broadcast across all channels, sent from the Villani capital. It was Kalon, a Villani speaker, who had once been a teacher. People of the galaxy, Keelan began, his voice shaking but clear. I stand here in the ruins of my city. My people are dying, but I do not speak to beg for our lives. I speak to ask you a question. Images played behind him. Human soldiers carrying wounded Villani. Villani empaths helping human troops. Bodies of both species lying side by side in the streets. We are weak, Keelan continued. The Galactic Council was correct about that. We cannot defend ourselves. But humanity came anyway. They are dying for us. Not because we are useful. Not because we can repay them. They are dying because they believe we matter. His glow intensified, anger mixing with grief. And where are you? Where is the mighty Galactic Council? Where are the powerful species who claim to uphold order and justice? You watched the Crawl attack. You watched humans bleed. And you did nothing. The message went viral across the galaxy within hours. Young species watched it and felt ashamed. Even some older races felt uncomfortable. The human broadcasts from Velen Prime showed something they had forgotten. That courage wasn't just about winning. It was about standing up, even when victory seemed impossible. 3 new ships jumped into the system on the 4th day. They weren't human. They were from the Tauran, a young species that had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. The ships were small and outdated, but they came anyway. This is Captain Bren of the Tauran Defense Fleet, a voice crackled over the radio. We heard about what's happening here. We want to help. Sora almost cried. Welcome to the fight, Captain. More ships arrived over the next week. Young species, minor powers, even a few vessels from major civilizations who came without official approval. None of them brought large fleets. Most brought only a ship or 2. But it was enough to shift the balance. The Crawl found themselves facing not just humanity, but a growing coalition. War Chief Karak raged at this turn of events. But his warriors were tired. They had expected easy prey and found a grinding war of attrition instead. In the ruins of the Garden District, Soren lay dying. A Crawl plasma bolt had caught him in the chest. Hyun knelt beside him, holding his glowing hand. Did we help? Soren whispered. Did we matter? You saved a battalion, Hyun told him. tears streaming down his face. 200 Marines made it out because of your warning. You mattered more than you'll ever know. Soren's glow flickered and faded. He died with a small smile on his face, knowing he had stood beside the humans who had stood beside his people. 2 years had passed since the first shot was fired. The war had ground to a brutal stalemate. But slowly, impossibly, humanity and the Villani were winning. The Crawl had lost too many ships, taken too many casualties. War Chief Karak finally pulled back his forces, unwilling to waste more warriors on a fight that had cost him everything. The Galactic Council convened for the first time since the conflict began. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the massive chamber. President Yuna Kang of Earth stood at the speaker's platform, a small human woman facing down some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. You called us reckless, Yuna began, her voice carrying clearly. You said we were throwing away lives for a species that wasn't worth saving. You told us the Villani were a lost cause. She pressed a button, and holographic images filled the chamber. They showed the integrated cities on Villan Prime, where humans and Villani lived and worked together. Medical facilities where Villani empaths helped human soldiers heal from trauma. Laboratories where both species collaborated on new technologies. You were wrong, Yuna said simply. We didn't save the Villani. We stood with them, and both our species became something greater. Ambassador Vrax stood up, his scales gleaming under the lights. Pretty words. But at what cost? How many humans died for these greater things? 8,432, Yuna replied without hesitation. I know every name, every face, every family that lost someone, and I would make the same choice again. I signed. Murmurs rippled through the council. Beside Yuna, Day One stood in his dress uniform, medals covering his chest. He had been promoted to admiral, though he rarely used the title. Next to him was Lyran, representing the Villani people. The Villani have something to share, Yuna continued. Something that might help you understand why humanity's choice was not just moral, but strategic. Lyran stepped forward, his glow steady now, no longer flickering with fear. My people have lived for thousands of years perfecting the art of peace. We learned to sense emotions, to understand the feelings of others. But we never thought to combine this ability with the tools of defense. A new hologram appeared. It showed a network of interconnected minds. Villani empaths linked together with human tactical systems. Working with humanity, we have created something new. A defensive network that can predict enemy movements, not through calculations, but through understanding. We can feel the intentions of hostile forces before they act. This has military applications, Dr. Hannah Park added, stepping up beside them. She looked older now, with gray streaks in her hair. But it goes far beyond that. Villani human medical teams have reduced combat trauma recovery time by 70%. Our joint research has produced new communication technologies that will change how species interact across the galaxy. She pulled up more data. Species that bond with the Villani report higher crew morale, better mental health, and improved decision-making. The Villani don't make you stronger through weapons. They make you stronger by helping you understand yourselves and each other. The council was silent now, processing this information. Several representatives leaned forward, interested despite themselves. We are proposing a new treaty, Yuna announced. The Sanctuary Protocols. Any species that requests protection will receive it. Coordinated through a coalition of willing defenders. No more abandoning the weak because they can't fight. No more letting raiders destroy civilizations because defending them isn't profitable. Defined. No more. No more. No more. No more. Abandoning the weak. Madness, someone shouted from the gallery. We cannot protect everyone. No, Day One spoke for the first time. But we can try. And in trying, we become better than we were. The vote took 3 hours. It was closer than anyone expected. Many older species voted against it, unwilling to change systems that had worked for millennia. But younger species, inspired by what happened at Velan Prime, voted in favor. So did a surprising number of smaller civilizations, who had always feared they might be next to be abandoned. The sanctuary protocols passed by a narrow margin. It wasn't a perfect solution. It wouldn't save everyone. But it was a start. Afterward, Day1 and Liren stood together on a balcony overlooking the council chambers. "Thank you," Liren said quietly. "For everything. You would have done the same for us," Day1 replied. "Would we?" Liren wondered. "Before you came, I don't think we would have. We were so focused on our own survival that we never thought about what we could give to others. You taught us that true strength is not just about protecting yourself. It's about protecting others." On Velan Prime, life was slowly returning to normal. The cities were being rebuilt, with human architects and Velani artists working together. The new buildings were both functional and beautiful, a blend of two philosophies. Hyun and Tile walked through one of the new gardens. Hyun walked with a limp now, a permanent reminder of the war. Tile still had nightmares about the Crawl attack, but they had each other, and slowly, they were healing together. "Do you think it will last?" Tail asked. "The peace? I don't know," Hyun admitted. "But we'll be ready if it doesn't." Together, General Inwoo stood at a memorial wall where thousands of names were carved. Human and Velani, side by side. His daughter's name was there. She had been a medic, killed during the third battle. He traced her name with his fingers, tears running down his face. A Velani child approached him, holding a glowing flower. "My father says your daughter saved his life," the child said softly. "He told me to give this to you. It's from our garden." Inwoo took the flower, its soft light reflecting in his tears. "Thank you." Across the galaxy, things were changing. 3 species had already requested protection under the new sanctuary protocols. The Human-Velani alliance was growing, adding new members who believed there was a better way to survive than through strength alone. The Crawl watched from the edges of known space, licking their wounds. War Chief Karak had been removed from power, his failure complete. The new leaders looked at the coalition forming around humanity and Velan Prime and saw something they didn't understand. How could weakness become strength? How could compassion be strategic? They would learn, eventually, or they would be left behind. 20 years later, Admiral Day1 walked through the memorial gardens on Velan Prime. He was an old man now, his hair white, his body bent with age, but he still came here every year on the anniversary of first contact. The gardens were magnificent. A collaboration between human and Velani artists that stretched for miles. At the center was a statue showing a human soldier and a Velani civilian standing back to back, protecting each other. A young human girl ran past, chasing a Velani child, both of them laughing. They were the generation born after the war, who would never know a time when humans and Velani weren't partners. "Captain Day1," a voice called. It was Liren, impossibly still alive. The Velani lived longer than humans, and he had made it his mission to see their alliance flourish. "Just Day1 now," the old admiral smiled. "I retired years ago. You will always be the captain who stayed," Liren said, his glow warm and gentle. "The one who didn't abandon us." Day1 looked at the statue, at the gardens, at the children playing. "I made a choice. That's all. To help someone who needed it. And that choice changed everything," Liren said. "For both our species. For the whole galaxy." They stood together in silence, 2 old friends who had seen war and peace, loss and hope. Around them, the gardens bloomed with flowers that glowed in the twilight. Human and Velani, working side by side to maintain them. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. That strength wasn't just about power. That protecting the weak wasn't weakness. That sometimes, the most strategic choice was simply to do what was right. And it all started because one human captain looked at a vulnerable alien race and said, "We're not leaving you behind." All species had abandoned the Velani. All except humanity. And in choosing to stand with them, Humanity had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be strong.